Thank you so much for joining us on the pod, Tanya.
Oh, you're welcome.
Are you sick of me yet? We spent a whole match day -1 together a couple of weeks ago.
Never sick of you, never sick of you. And I'm glad that you are drinking water out of that can.
Thank you for pointing that out again to our listeners.
Blink twice if you've seen too much of Rachel recently. Yeah, thought so.
I had a lovely time. It was really interesting to spend the day with Northern Ireland. I was about to praise Tanya and her team, Chloe.
Crack on. Sorry, go for it.
It was really interesting to see how everything works behind the scenes and having a chat with you about all the work that goes into it, which we're going to get into now.
100%. I mean, we're speaking over 2 weeks away from Northern Ireland's crucial playoff against Norway. I mean, what does an international coach do on an international break? Go on
holiday.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, go to the beach.
To where? Where are you holidaying?
Yeah, no, I'm not. I'm definitely not.
Oh, right. Sorry,
no.
I didn't catch the sarcasm. I can understand why, to be fair,
Albie
your
never
3-year-old
gets
is
it
struggling.
either.
She's Australian, Chloe. She is going to be sarcastic.
Yeah, everything I say is sarcastic.
I'm Irish. I'm on your wavelength.
Yeah. Look, I think it's a real short turnaround this time around. So it's trying to wrap up the last window and prepare straight away for the next one, especially given that it's so important. And I think part of the, I suppose, real push that we've been working with the girls on is that accountability piece and them wanting to be better, not just kind of when they're with us, but away from the window too. So player meetings, individual player development plans and reviews, etc., is probably, that takes up a bulk of the time. Mm-hmm. But then obviously the prep in terms of opposition analysis and session planning and all the logistical stuff that goes with, sort of playing in a playoff.
Oh my God, that's so much work for a break.
What? It's not a break, Chloe.
It was a break other than you.
Stop calling it a break. I was going to ask you as well, because Norway, tough opposition.
It is.
And they've been quite inconsistent of late as well.
Yeah, look, it's going to be a really good challenge for us. You look at their squad and the depth is insane. But we want to challenge ourselves against the best. And, speaking to a few of the girls this week, they're really up for it, really excited for the challenge. So we can only go in, we're the underdogs in this one. We know that. We can only go in and sort of concentrate on ourselves and, and try and improve in all the areas we know we're developing in and hope for the best in terms of an outcome.
Do you feel like it raises the team's level when you play against tough opposition?
I think it raises the level in terms of the speed in which they've got to think and make decisions. So what we do necessarily doesn't change, but the speed in which we have to do it does. And obviously, if you get that wrong, that's when you get punished. So, look, we're still quite early in the journey. So I would, I'd imagine that if we can keep ourselves in the tie, going away to Norway in the second leg, then for us that's a really good position to be in.
And have you always been a coach who does quite a lot of research analysis on opposition, or are you sort of is it a mindset that's kind of focused on, your team essentially?
It's understanding the trends of the opposition in relation to what you want to do. Mm-hmm. I think early on I probably focused a lot just on the opposition, and I think maybe that's because I didn't really know myself what I wanted in terms of like my game model and what I wanted the squad to be doing. Probably Bristol days it was more about adapting to the opposition and not really trusting, I suppose, what we were going after. Whereas I think now it's about, okay, well, within our philosophy, what areas do we need to be focusing on and applying, in relation to the opposition, as opposed to changing everything for the opposition.
And what would you say your kind of main philosophy tenets are? Like, what's the kind of Tanya Oxtoby philosophy of football?
Aggression.
Nice. Strong.
No, look, we want decision makers. So, I'm pretty principally based, and I want players to be able to make decisions based off that, because there is nothing worse than coaches that stand on the sideline and dictate every single pass and make decisions for players, because as you get to bigger tournaments or as you go to Wembley and you're playing an FA Cup final, players can't hear you. Mm-hmm. So you're only setting them up to fail at that point. So sort of aggressive, really intelligent decision makers for me. And look, I want a team that is comfortable with and without the ball and can control a game with and without the ball, because I think when you play different opposition, you need to be able to do both, effectively. Mm-hmm. So there isn't I love pretty possession-based football all the time, because that's just unrealistic. But can we control the game at all points and manage momentum as best we can with good decision making?
In terms of that analysis, I know we've spoken about this before, but that is something in terms of the depth of analysis that you're able to provide now post international matches is probably relatively new to some of the players, because it is an area that you have expanded. So how have they managed that area of things in terms of the information that they're getting in?
Yeah, it's been a process. It's probably been the one area that I felt I kind of went into the job and I went in all guns blazing, and I could just see glazed over eyes. And that wasn't just players, that was staff too. They were like, oh no, this is not, I don't know what you're talking about here, or I don't know how to interpret that. So it was just about stripping it back a little bit and making it a little bit more bite-sized in terms of what we were showing and when we were showing it. But I feel like now we're in a really good place where the players always joke. They're like, oh, what stats have you got for us today? Like just always throwing stuff at them, I suppose. But I think the biggest change has been in the individual reporting. So they get a real snapshot, I suppose, across the camp around what their individual football actions have looked like, so that it's not just subjective, it's objective. And I think they really like that, because then that gives them some context for the other stuff that we show. So it's just trying to make it realistic and relatable and having some context to it. There's nothing worse than a coach that just throws stats at you and you're like, well, how is that even relevant to what we're talking about? So if it's not relevant, it doesn't get shown. And if they feel like it's not relevant and I've shown it, then they let me know.
They're quite vocal then.
They are, yeah. Like they're learning the sarcasm. It's good.
It takes a while, Tanya. I'm not going to lie. It really doesn't. It's taken me 7 minutes and 14 seconds to get a real read on it. So yeah,
you'll get there by the end of the show. It'll be fine.
Oh God,
you're going to believe nothing she says now.
100%. I don't know what's going to be lies, facts, truth, or anything in between.
It's the way I roll.
But it says a lot about you as a coach that players can feel like they can say to you, I don't get it. Why is that relevant? Like that you have that rapport that they feel comfortable challenging on that.
It's important because I think, you want to feel comfortable, like in any job, you want to feel comfortable if you don't understand something to be able to ask. And if we don't create that environment, we're shooting ourselves in the foot, because players will just nod and smile and be like, yeah, cool. Like I'll go out and then they're not doing what you've asked anyway. So if they're not sure, we want them to ask. And a lot of the time it's probably the way we've delivered it as opposed to the way they've interpreted it. It's clear in our mind, but then we've kind of delivered it in a way that isn't really clear to them. So that's our responsibility to make sure that we check and challenge that. And I think the easiest way to do that is in player meetings and they hate it when I do this, but I'll be like, oh, such and such, come up the front and show us how they're going to press today.
Oh, that's horrible. Oh. That's so mean.
And if they're stood there, I'm like, right, you come up and you help. And then they're kind of looking at each other like, we hate you so much right now. But
I used to hate that. I used to hate being called out. I mean, the Palace set, like as soon as you had the set piece coach who'd come in, be like, okay, well, this is how you set you all up and this is what's going to happen and this is going to come in. And I was like, no, I've not got it at all. I've glazed. I've gone. Sorry.
You're just like, I just keep the ball out of the net.
What do you want me to do?
Yeah. Look, I think you got to be strategic about who you pick as well, because
sure.
I do think you got to that's where you got to know your players, and I think if you know someone is super uncomfortable, don't put them in that position, because again, like you want to build that rapport and the confidence. Maybe in 12 months' time that might be a comfortable position for them to be in. But I pick my victims very carefully,
nice.
And they do love it. They think that I'm quite funny, and they just roll their eyes and just go, oh, here we go again.
I love that. Well, I think that kind of thing comes from a lot of experience, obviously having built up, rapport with other teams. So obviously you were most recently head coach at Bristol City, then assistant coach at Chelsea, and now you've been the Northern Ireland manager for over a year. What was it about this role that kind of drew you to it? What was the kind of, this is the job that I'm going to be taking on?
It's a really interesting one because it wasn't really a job I was looking for, to be honest. I was going to the World Cup to do some media stuff. Wasn't really necessarily looking for a role, and this role came up and I had a conversation before I went out to Australia, and I think that the thing that struck me the most was around it being a project that I could really build and that my skill set would sort of bring to life. But the family values was the big thing for me, was around the understanding of my position and I suppose my personal situation, and that shouldn't hinder my ability to do my job. So I think that then drew me into a further conversation, and it felt like it was a good fit. They were looking for someone to be able to come in and sort of revamp things and create a high performing environment. I had that experience obviously being at Chelsea. I'd had the player development piece with Bristol. So it just felt like a good project where I could kind of bring that to life a little bit. And the support that obviously they've given me in terms of having a young family has been immense as well.
Amazing.
Is it fair to say that and we're not diminishing the amount of work that goes into being an international coach, but it's a better work-life balance for you, which was key.
Well, apparently I go on holiday
according to Chloe. Yeah.
Well, listen, it says break for a reason.
It says that, yeah, it does. I mean, no one says you can't work from the beach. So like remote working.
There we go. It's 2024, guys.
You know what I mean? Get with the program. No, I think I always say you struggle to get work-life balance in this job just with the nature of the work, but you get equilibrium. So this job gives me more of that. So obviously when I'm away for 10 days, it's intense and I'm not necessarily as present, but when I am home, I am able to be more present and, you know, have a little bit more of an input in things. So it definitely gives me that better balance, and I'm a happier person for it, I think.
Do you get to bring your family to games? Do they come along and sort of see you in action?
I do. They've come twice, and maybe that's to do with the way that I am on camp. I don't know, but both playoff games, we've won both. So maybe that's a lucky charm.
Nice.
I'm not quite sure. They're not coming against Norway, so we shall put that theory to the test.
100%.
Yeah. That's a bit risky.
Yeah.
You touched on youth players there. With your time at Bristol, you had quite a few come through. Katie Robinson, Sophie Bagley, Ebony Salmon, Poppy Pattinson.
God, that's quite a list.
To name just a few.
Yeah.
If you had to tell us what your secret ingredient is for bringing the best out of youth players, what would it be, or can you tell us?
You missed Naomi Lizelle off that list.
I said name but a few.
I don't know if there's a secret to it. I think it's probably about with younger players, like some of the players that you've named there, it's about giving them an opportunity to play. And, you know, during my time at Bristol, it was like we had trials, like we're a WSL side and we have trials, you know, because we just didn't have the budget that everybody else had. So I think it's about opening up the door and saying, right, you know, come in, show us what you've got. But the key for me was more about, like, rather than picking at the things that players, you know, would say is their weakness or areas of development, it was about what are they good at and how do we make that even better, and actually give them an environment where they want to push themselves. And we're never going to match in terms of money, but we can give you game time, you know, at the highest level. But we also individually will help develop you. So, you know, it's and rather than saying, oh, we want to develop you in these areas because you're not good at that, actually it was, we think you're great at this. How do we enhance that? And we'll slowly start to work on maybe the areas that, you know, you feel aren't your strength.
I guess the Bristol environment as well, you know, it wasn't like a young player in a squad stacked, and if they don't have a good performance, they're out the next game. Like they were the squad. So it was almost like there was an element of bravery and confidence there. It was like, you can go out and do what you can do, I suppose. Yeah,
and that's on me at the end of the day. Like for me, I was like, this doesn't come back on you. I remember we played Man City away. We had like a number of our more senior players. I'm doing that in quite, you know, because they were still quite young, but we had like COVID go through the group, and it's like, guys, you just got to go play. Gone all the way up to Man City. I think it was 9-0 in the end. It was disaster, but it's not their fault. Like, I want you to go and test yourself. I want you to go and play, and whatever happens, that's on me. Like, it doesn't fall at your feet, because you're never going to get better if we don't expose you to those situations. So yeah, I think it's more just them feeling free enough to express themselves and also learn. And the accountability piece for me was the key bit around, we're not just going out and playing for the sake of it. Like, how are we going to get better and how are you going to drive that? And we will try and provide all the support we can within our resources to give you those opportunities. But essentially that falls onto you. So, you know, it's a partnership in that sense where they feel safe enough to be able to challenge themselves.
Oh my God, that's such a lovely style of management. Honestly, like, I remember losing 9-0 when I was with Palace to Arsenal in the FA Cup, and we did not get that kind of stuff. It was, what the hell have you not just
Especially
done?
as a goalkeeper.
Why have you picked that ball out the back of your net 9 times, Chloe? I remember it quite clearly, actually, in the Arsenal dressing room.
It's not the first time that's come up in this pod either.
Did I shed a tear? Maybe I did. But I would have appreciated that style of management is what I was trying to say.
Maybe I was so used to it, it became, you know, the thing. But I just think at the end of the day, like, it's that they're doing their best.
Yeah.
And I think, you know, as staff, we were doing our best. As players, they were doing their best. So what good is it to point the finger? At the end of the day, we're in it all together, and we had some great results along the way as well. So you got to take the good with the bad.
For sure. See, it wasn't my fault, Palace. Moving on. Talking of Naomi Lizelle, Bristol City recently announced their big plans for their development strategy after selling her for a lot of money. Do you think we're going to see sort of more clubs developing and selling as a transfer strategy?
Yeah,
Okay.
Yeah, I do. I think it's been creeping into the game probably over the last 3 or 4 years domestically, like the bigger clubs are, very aware of the profitability in that area. And I think some of the rules around how many domestic loans you can have and things like that for bigger clubs is certainly difficult. I know it's something that's being looked at, and I'm out of the loop with that now, but it's certainly an area that will come into the women's game more and more. And I think as a club that maybe isn't one of the big hitters, yourself when you're developing a player that they are going to leave, that. So why not, rewards the effort. I remember it was before my time, but Lauren Hem went to Man City and there was no compensation at that point. So, I think you have to start to reward some of the clubs that invest in the youth and give them that opportunity financially so that they then can, reinvest that money back into their squads or facilities, and the whole kind of pyramid continues to grow.
We've seen that, with Naomi, and I think Laura Blinkilder-Brown was another one from Aston Villa where they actually got some good money for her rather than just creating these great talents and waving them off and seeing so little compensation for all the effort that's gone into that. In light of that, are you concerned that an achievement like yours with Bristol City finishing 6th in the 2018-19 season, your first season at the club, with one of the lowest budgets in the division, is becoming harder to achieve? Or do you feel like, and I recently went and visited Bristol last week to chat to them about their new strategy, do you feel like it's good to see a club trying to create a sustainable structure?
Oh, what a question. As she takes a sip out of her can
of
water.
I like the model that Bristol have. I think there is a place for that, 100%. And I think we don't want to lose that from the women's game. I think there's certainly a need for that within the women's system and pyramid. I do think it's getting harder and harder to see that type of, I suppose, performances. And you talk about going on holiday. I remember at Christmas, I was like, what is all this business? Like in my first season, I was like, what is all this? Like, I don't know what people are complaining about. This job's a doddle. Like, this is great. Like, safe at Christmas. Off I went on holiday. Oh, how wrong I was for the next 2 seasons. But I think it's getting harder and harder because more and more resources obviously are getting pumped into that top sort of tier, and the gap is getting bigger and bigger. But I do think there's a place for both, in my opinion. So I feel for the Bristols of the world, obviously having come from there, and then obviously being, as a part of the Chelsea machine, I also get it from their perspective too. So I like that I kind of sit somewhere in the middle now, which is nice.
On the fence, Chloe, you love that.
I do like being on the fence, actually. It's a very safe space.
Yeah.
You went from head coach at Bristol to assistant coach at Chelsea. Was any part of you surprised when Emma Hayes also made the switch to international football?
No.
Saw it coming?
Not at all.
Oh, you could have let us know.
No, mate.
Oh, Christ.
It's like what's said in the building stays in the building.
When did she tell you?
No, she didn't. Look, I know some of the conversations that we'd had around, the family balance and some of the, I suppose, like the stresses that go, like I wasn't even in her shoes. I cannot imagine, being a leader of a machine like that, how stressful that would be. But I could see that it was getting a lot and, the mum guilt, that we all feel. So it wasn't a surprise to me at all. And look, Emma's such a fantastic manager. She would have had, her choice of, I suppose, roles. And this role suits her down to the ground. She is a born winner. She sort of has all the processes and the high performing parts that go with that. And I think that is a marriage made in heaven.
I mean, she'll be coming back to the UK end of this month for the USA UK game.
USA UK.
USA UK.
Are you okay?
She hasn't had enough tea yet.
She's playing all of the home nations.
All together.
That's the only way that you can beat the US women's national team under Emma Hayes, okay? If we all band together and we all just take them out. It's like Chelsea.
4 goalkeepers.
Yeah,
okay.
100%. Just play what would that be, like a 44-man squad?
Sounds fair.
Yeah.
Can I ask you, we've touched on Bristol, we've touched on Chelsea. Bristol, of course, you're working with a very low budget, young players, punching, and then you go to Chelsea, high performance environment, winning environment. How valuable was that when it came to the experience in terms of preparing for Northern Ireland?
It was a perfect storm, I think, because this role requires a little bit of both. And I think trying to get the balance right of how much of each is probably the tricky part. So there's obviously periods of time where it's about developing the players and the staff and making sure that they feel comfortable with our processes. But then there's also like we're judged on results and making sure that we win and get across the line. So it's a sliding scale of that. And I just feel like those two experiences were like invaluable in being able to shape kind of when and where I apply those parts. I don't always get it right, but I like to think if I don't get it right, then I can at least reflect on it and go, oh, probably needed to go a little bit more down the other side of the scale there. So I'm lucky that I've had both and I've seen both perspectives as well. So I think that helps in terms of international management, you know, when you're dealing with clubs and understanding the manager's shoes that they're walking in as well. I think it's important. So yeah, it's definitely allowed me, you know, a good foundation to be able to get into this role.
But also the changes you've implemented take time, right? So it's not a matter of like you bring in 5 more analysts or you change your approach to something.
Well, I would if I could. No,
Well,
I'm just joking.
No, but like it does take time for them to see the impact of those changes. And you've only been there a year.
Yeah, I think the first like probably 6 months was tough, really, really tough. You know, I went into the first camp and I didn't take any of my own staff at all. The squad probably wasn't really even mine because the squad had to be in and I'd only been in post 5 days. So, you know, it's those types of things then when you're like, and then you play obviously the Republic at the Aviva and you
look a bit smug
game.
there.
No,
Yeah,
I
right?
remember
You need to-
being your
you need
first
to bring
game.
that in.
Such
Enough
a big
from
game.
You. Sorry about
I
that.
didn't even bring that up. I didn't say
I opened that door.
Yeah,
that door.
sure.
Gosh.
But so, you know, it's that type of starting point. Then you think we can only go up from here.
deep end, right?
Yeah. You can only go up from here when you stood on the sideline and you literally have no comms and you have no visuals because everything's gone down. So you stood there going, I don't even really know everybody's name yet. And you're just kind of crossing your fingers and hoping for the best at that point. But 6 months on, you then start to put processes in place. You start to bring people in with the right skill set or upskill the people that are there. And I just feel like we've finally got some continuity now, 12 months in. And I think the players appreciate that. The staff certainly appreciate that. So it's not perfect, but we certainly are in a much better place 12 months in. And we're, you know, I always say the hardest thing to do is to win when you're trying to make those adjustments and you're in transition. And we've kind of done enough, I think, of that to buy us some more time.
And you mentioned they're sort of bringing in sort of new people, trying to get the right staff behind you and the support. What are the specific areas, I suppose, that you've helped to kind of professionalise since your reign? With the
My
team?
reign, yeah. Well, from the beach, I make sure that look, the physical performance gap was the massive one for us. You know, when you look at, I suppose, the statistical data around the performance gap between international and domestic, it's large anyway, just by the nature of kind of what you're asking the players to do. So for us, it was around knowing where our players were at and I suppose where we needed to get them to and what processes we needed to put in place to help support that. We've got players that play domestically and the league, you know, it runs separately to the league over here. So we've got players on different cycles. We've got players all over the place. So that piece was really, really important. And then for me, it was around, I suppose, it is analysis, but it's more the personal accountability of how we want to play within that. So, you know, not just turning up on a Monday morning when camp starts and being like, right, who we've got this week, like, let's give this a go. You know, where's your accountability to make sure that you understand what the trends of the opposition are, what we're going after in training, like all of that sort of stuff is available for the players prior to them coming in. And I check if they've seen it or not.
Don't you call them out again?
I don't call them out.
First day, first in the door.
I just
right, you.
I'm like, who's watched it? Because I've got the list.
Is there a repeat offender?
No.
You couldn't tell us even if there
No,
was.
she wouldn't do that.
No. But I think that there's been a massive shift in that, and now we've got. You know, I walked through the lobby the other day when we were in camp, and they were all sat there on their phones on huddle. Like that is. Like when you think about where we started, that is
like, quick, Tanya's coming.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Girls, I'm giving you a shout out. So if you could actually do it for real now, that'd be
coming
really helpful.
in the door.
Yeah, she's here. Quick. Let's pretend we're having a football conversation. Put Real Housewives away. Yeah.
You've obviously got a lot of young talent in the squad and some more experienced heads, but also in terms of experience, you've had, you know, players who've been in the WSL and playing the championship. How do you manage that kind of level of experience?
I think you want to enhance the leadership within the senior players, and you want them to bring the younger ones along with the journey. And we've got some really, really, amazing people in our squad that they probably just needed the opportunity to say, actually, like, I want you to step into that role. I want you to, rather than complaining maybe about or getting frustrated about not having what you feel you need on the pitch, why don't you sit with them and go through, what your expectations are, and, when the ball's played there, what support do you need? And they probably don't understand or know. And as a senior player that's played in the WSL or Championship or who's been to a Euros, like, younger players are craving that input. So I think that has been the biggest, thing that's made me smile over the last sort of 3 or 4 months is we've now got senior players that are sat educating the younger ones, and the younger ones wanting to really embrace, like, can I grab you for 5 minutes? And like, that's a culture piece, I suppose, that, just shows we're on the right track. And now I just need to make sure the senior players are telling them the right things, but that's a whole nother conversation. I need this. No, I'm just joking.
Well, let's reflect a little bit on your journey as qualifier for Euro 2025. Just round the corner, it feels like it's just creeping up. Like, it's Christmas now, and then all of a sudden, boom, we're straight into it. You beat Malta 2-0 to book your place in the playoffs, and then your 2-0 win over Bosnia meant you clinched second place in the group. Looking back at those two key games, what would you say changed? That's a very bright smile.
I just felt like I don't know how to put my finger on it, but just felt like the penny dropped in terms of what we were asking the players to do. And I don't know, just they looked like they played with freedom. They looked like they were enjoying themselves. They looked like they believed in what it was that we'd been working towards. And I think momentum's a funny thing, right? Like, you get a really good performance, you get some momentum, and all of a sudden it seems like things are clicking that maybe weren't clicking before. And I think that window gave everyone some real confidence about what we're trying to do, and I think they needed that. I think the group really needed it. I think the staff really needed it as well, because we were working so hard. So it just felt like at that point, like we turned a corner, and we just felt like, okay, we're getting a reward for all that effort now, rather than so close, so close, so close.
Let's talk about the Croatia game. You won 2-1 on aggregate in the first round of qualifying, which then set you up for this Norway tie. But for our listeners' benefit, maybe give them just a very brief overview of what the first leg was like before we then go into the second leg, where you got that winner in the 114th minute.
Squeaky bum time.
Yeah, I'll give you the PG version of look, I thought the first leg, especially the first half, we absolutely dominated. We sort of executed everything that we'd been asking, just without the finishing product. I think we hit the crossbar. I think we hit the upright. Goalkeeper made a worldie of a save. And at that point, you're starting to think, oh, this isn't our night. And they'd obviously got an early penalty. I think it was in the 3rd minute, which I thought was soft, but I can see why it was given. And at that point, I was like, this is a massive challenge for us now. Like, 3 minutes in, you're away from home in a playoff, like, you've got a choice here as a group. Like, do you really now go, okay, well, it's only 3 minutes in, we've got the whole game to play, or do you start to go in your shell and think, oh, this isn't how we planned this to go? And to the girls' credit, it was almost like we went down the other end and hit the crossbar straight away, and we just kind of swung the momentum back. And I think not taking those chances probably hurt us a little bit. We ended up getting the equaliser really late, which was very pleasing, and we won't talk about the celebrations that went on sort of after that. But to go back into the home leg, almost with a clean slate at that point was like job done for us, because it was such a difficult week in terms of logistically and all the things that had gone off the pitch that we couldn't control. To go home and be in a position where we were still in control felt pretty good.
For our listeners' benefit, it wasn't the best of pitches, but also not the best of preparation in terms of facilities for you to train on. Lights weren't being turned on. You had random people walking through the facilities you were meant to be using as a team. So in terms of the levels expected for such an important game, they really weren't met. And that's a difficult thing to have to manage then, to then go on and play such an important game.
It is, and I think we'd said right at the start of the week, I think it was our very first meeting, let's just control the things that we can control, because we knew that there was going to be some spanners thrown in the works. There always is. But obviously to that level, it makes it really
Not
difficult.
those spanners.
No, not that type of spanners. Anyway. But look, I thought the girls were great because there was like, at any point they could have really just, thrown the towel and be like, this is like, you preach to us about high performing environment and all of that sort of stuff. And this is not it. But they didn't. They were like, right, like we're going to use this as motivation and actually like, don't care what you throw at us. We're going to beat you anyway. Yeah. So, it was, we laugh about it now, but obviously at the time it was not funny at all. I think my boots are still floating around somewhere in Croatia as well.
Yeah,
so.
you were very worried about them the last time I saw
momentum.
You never found them.
No,
such a shame.
They're definitely gone. Maybe when they turn the lights on, they might find them there.
Well, talk to us about that second leg in Belfast. Obviously, as Rachel alluded to, the moment Lauren Wade hammered home that winner in the 114th minute. I mean, what were you thinking at that point? Like, what was going through your mind? And you can swear on the pod.
Get the fuck in, is what I was thinking. Like, I think you could see the celebrations. Like, there was a staff pile-on, and it was like, I don't even know what happened after that. So it was relief. It was relief at that point because it was like, we'd done everything we could. They'd had a couple of really good chances as well. I thought defensively, we'd blocked, we'd cleared off the line. We'd done everything we needed to do, and we just needed that little moment of quality. And, Lauren Wade has popped up so many times when we've needed her, and what an absolute banger of a goal, like worthy of winning any game.
As goals go, in your history so far, that must be up there with like the goals that you've seen. Like
that was decent. I'm not going to lie.
Not even for the quality of it, but just like what it meant. But
the quality on top to get both.
Yeah.
No, it was good, and we've been saying all week, like we don't need to walk it in the back of the net. Like we have this tendency where we want to like basically play the perfect.
Oh, listen, you're not the only team that does that.
Come on, just shoot from range. So obviously she's like taking that literally, and I'll take the plaudits for that.
100%. I mean, congratulations.
Thanks.
Yeah, that moment. Like,
no, it was pretty special, and I think everybody like really, really enjoyed it. It was good. So relief more than anything.
Talk to us about how you celebrated the PG version.
PG version. I had my little one running around at Windsor Park. He went in the change rooms, ate all the girls' pizza.
Love that.
Jumped on, did his own interview and sung a song.
Wow.
Yeah. And then I took him home and put him to bed.
Nice.
The perfect end.
Yeah, that was rock and roll. That's how I go. Yeah. Then he was up at 6. So yeah, I think I went to bed about 2 and he was up at 6. So that was rough.
God, that's really managing 2 roles right there.
Yeah, it was that day was painful.
I can imagine.
Yeah, painful trip back.
When you became Northern Ireland head coach, you said you had ambitions of qualifying for major tournaments, and of course you're very close to doing that for Euro 2025, which would be 2. Are you preparing the team mentally for such a crucial game? Because, I mean, to be fair, the benefits, I guess, of round 1 and 2 is that round 1 is the most important game, right? You have to get through that to get to round 2. So it almost prepares you should you get through for the next one. Yeah,
look, I think for us, we spoke a lot throughout the Croatia stuff about like, don't play the occasion, play the game. And that's got to be our focus again. So mentally not getting caught up in all the stuff that goes with playoffs. Everybody's more interested. There's more media presence, especially for us, we're going to be at home, which is a rarity for us first off. Don't get caught up in all of that. Really focus and hone in on the process points that we're going after, and do those to the best of your ability for 90 plus minutes, 100 and whatever minutes. And, give us an opportunity then in the second leg to be in a position to do something. So that's all you can do at that point, and because you never know what's going to happen. So we're just going to have to take it sort of day by day.
And what would it mean to you to kind of get to back-to-back European Championships? Like how are you celebrating that one? Because it's got to be better than your son stealing pizza.
Well, he's not coming to Norway, so I'm going to the bar, and that's
pizza's yours.
That is going to be another long trip home, I think, if we were to make it. But I'm honestly not thinking that far ahead, because I don't want us to get caught up in things. But I've said all along, the whole purpose of taking this job was to get us to major tournaments. So if we're to do that, then obviously like my overriding emotion with pride, because it's been, one tough journey to get there. I think the process to qualify the last time is not what the process is now. And women's football has grown massively. So, for us to do it back to back, such a small nation with limited resources, like what an achievement that would be.
It would absolutely be an incredible achievement, because I think sometimes people can look at it and say, oh, well, they qualified before, so now they're a team that qualifies for major tournaments. And that's not necessarily the case, especially for these smaller nations. So if you were to achieve that back to back, it would really be incredible, because you literally have been in the job for about a year and about 15 months or something.
I'll definitely be on the beach at that point.
100.
So
I think you need to take an international break.
I'd just love a friendly. That would be nice. I haven't had one of them yet.
That sounds like the opposite of an international break.
No, well, yeah, but like an international friendly window would be lovely.
Abroad, maybe?
Yeah,
take
like
a couple of extra
Spain,
days.
you know.
You want
just
to play Spain?
Training camp. No, I don't want to. I never said I want to play
Oh, fine,
Spain.
okay.
Yeah,
I just want to go.
That's not a break at all.
That's not
That
a
sounds
break.
like the worst kind of.
Yeah,
that's horrible.
no. Maybe Greece or somewhere instead.
Yeah,
Lovely.
nice. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, just get on the beach though, and just like lob your phone in the sea.
Beach football?
Oh, yeah,
It
decent.
doesn't have to involve
No,
football.
true,
It
sorry,
could just be
sorry.
lying down with a cocktail.
Yeah.
What's your cocktail of choice?
Mojito, maybe.
Oh,
Lovely.
nice.
Yeah.
Very-
Refreshing.
almost healthy though.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I've never heard.
Sure, Chloe.
Well, it's
That's how
got
Chloe
mint in
gets
it.
by.
It's got mint and soda and ice.
It's got herbs.
No, guys.
Botanicals, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, minty fresh. You don't need a chewing gum.
That's why I've not been losing weight all this fucking time. Right, well, I really hope you get that.
We'll all have a cocktail,
deserved. Yeah,
should you
we'll all
qualify.
have. We'll get you back in. We'll
Yes.
get a round of mojitos. You can get them in the little cans that you're. You
Okay,
deserve an umbrella.
perfect,
Back to back qualification.
100%.
We'll get you a real umbrella.
Nice.
Right? No expense spared on this podcast.
It'll be
okay?
a weird drink of choice with a real umbrella and a cocktail.
Listen, we do things differently on this pod.
Mate, I'm not judging. Go for it.
I think sometimes people should judge us.